Trash! The word cut through the air, sharper, colder. It stung worse than the sound of tearing paper that followed it. Principal Dolores Vance didn't just crumple the handwritten essay, she shredded it. She let the confetti of a 10-year-old boy's hard work rain down, slowly, onto the polished linoleum floor. Clean it up. She barked the command. And while you are down there, teach your son that heroes do not wear rags, and they certainly do not smell like industrial bleach. And failure. Marcus King tightened his grip on the gray mop handle. His knuckles turned white. He was standing just 3 feet away, clad in a stained blue jumpsuit, 2 sizes too big. To the students passing by, and especially to Principal Vance, he was invisible. Just part of the architecture, like the water fountain or the trash can. But watching his son Leo tremble, watching him wipe a tear from his cheek with a sleeve that was already too short, Marcus felt a heat rising in his chest. A heat that had nothing to do with the boiler room. Vance adjusted her designer glasses. She looked down her nose at the debris she had created. She stepped deliberately into the fresh puddle Marcus had just laid down. Her Italian leather heels left a muddy, arrogant scar on his work. "This is a prestigious academy, Leo," she sneered, looming over the boy. "We do not tolerate fantasies. Your father is a janitor. Writing an essay titled, 'My Dad, the Secret Hero,' is not creative. It is a lie, and I do not tolerate liars in my school." Marcus took a step forward. Squeak! The rubber soles of his cheap work boots screamed on the floor. Vance snapped her head toward him. Her lip curled in disgust. "Do not even think about speaking." She held up a manicured hand, warning him. "You are on thin ice, Mr. King. The only reason you and your charity case of a son are still here is because the board ignores my emails. But the parent-teacher meeting is this afternoon. If you do not have the tuition arrears by then, do not bother showing up. I will have security escort both the trash and the janitor out." She spun on her heel. "March, march, march." The click-clack of her shoes sounded like gunshots in the silent hallway. Marcus lowered his head, a posture of submission. That is what Vance expected, but she couldn't see his eyes. If she had, she would have seen the cold, calculating glint of a man who could buy this entire building with the interest his bank account earned in a single hour. He touched his chest pocket. He felt the outline of the antique watch hidden beneath the grime. Just 3 more days. He just needed 3 more days to prove to the board what kind of monster she really was. "It is okay, Dad," Leo whispered. He picked up a piece of his torn essay. "I know who you are." The lunchroom was buzzing. Smells of reheated pizza and teenage gossip filled the air. At a corner table, Leo was beaming. His small hands were animated as he whispered to his 2 best friends. "My dad said, the new library is going to have a glass roof, so we can see the stars." He didn't see the shadow falling over his table, but the silence that rippled through the cafeteria was impossible to miss. Leo looked up. Principal Vance was standing there, holding a portable microphone connected to the cafeteria's PA system. She tapped the mic. Thump, thump. The sound boomed like a heartbeat. "Attention, students!" Her voice was sweet, poisonously sweet. "We have a situation. It seems we have a storyteller in our midst. Leo King," she pointed a manicured finger at him, every head turned, "has been spreading rumors about financing our new library. Let me be clear. We appreciate imagination, but we do not appreciate pathological liars." Leo shrank into his seat. "His father is our janitor. He cleans your toilets. He does not build glass roofs. If you hear Leo telling these fantasies, please report it to me. We need to help him face reality." She clicked the mic off. The feedback squealed, a high-pitched screech that matched the ringing in Leo's ears. He didn't cry. He just stared at his untouched tray, while the whispers of liar and toilet cleaner started to circulate like a virus. In the hallway, Marcus gripped his broom. He had heard every word echoing from the open cafeteria doors. His jaw set hard. A muscle twitched in his cheek. He wanted to storm in there, to pull out the bank statement folded in his back pocket and silence her forever. But not yet. The trap wasn't ready. Vance walked out of the cafeteria looking satisfied. She spotted Marcus. She didn't stop. She didn't even slow down. She just whispered as she passed him, "Control your son, or I will." The next morning, the stakes got higher. It was 6 a.m. The school was empty, or so Vance thought. She slipped into the janitor's closet. The smell of ammonia and damp mops hit her. She wrinkled her nose in disgust. Hanging on a hook was Marcus's spare gray jumpsuit. Vance looked around. Left. Right. The coast was clear. She reached into her expensive handbag and pulled out a leather wallet. It was hers, bulging with cash. She shoved it deep into the pocket of Marcus's jumpsuit. "Let's see you fix your way out of grand larceny," she muttered to herself. A cruel smile played on her lips. She turned to leave, but she made a mistake. A fatal mistake for someone dealing with a tech genius. She didn't look up. High in the corner, masked by a layer of dust and a fake spiderweb, a tiny red light blinked. Once. Twice. Marcus hadn't just fixed the lights yesterday. He had reactivated the dormant security node in the closet. The dead camera that Vance had refused to pay to repair years ago was now recording in 4K resolution. 2 hours later, the storm broke. "Security, get in here!" Vance's scream tore through the administrative office. 2 burly guards rushed in. Marcus was already there, summoned for a performance review. He stood tall, calm, his hands clasped behind his back. "My wallet is missing," Vance hissed. She slammed her hand on the desk. "It was in my office, and he was the only one cleaning in there this morning." Marcus looked her dead in the eye. "I haven't been in your office today, Principal Vance." "Liar!" She turned to the guards. "Search him. Search his locker. Search that filthy closet he lives in." The guards hesitated. Marcus was well-liked. He always asked about their families. "Do it!" Vance shrieked. They led Marcus to the closet. Vance followed, her heels clicking eagerly. One guard patted down the spare jumpsuit hanging on the wall. He froze. He felt the lump. Slowly, he pulled out the leather wallet. Vance gasped. A theatrical, overacted gasp. "I knew it! A thief! A liar! And a thief!" She snatched the wallet back. Then she leaned in close to Marcus, invading his personal space. Her voice dropped to a whisper so the guards couldn't hear the venom. "You have 2 choices, Mr. King. You sign a voluntary resignation letter and withdraw that brat of yours from my school immediately. Or I call the police. And with your background, who do you think they will believe? The principal or the black janitor caught with the evidence?" She held out a pen. "Sign or go to jail." Marcus looked at the pen, then at the camera hidden in the corner. He slowly reached out his hand, but he didn't take the pen. He took out his phone. "I think," Marcus said, his voice deep and steady like a rolling thunder, "we should definitely call the police. In fact, I insist." The dust of the gala had settled, but the air at St. Jude's Academy had changed forever. It was a Tuesday, a bright, crisp morning. The sound of jackhammers echoed from the east wing, but nobody complained. It was the sound of progress. Cranes lifted massive panes of tempered glass into the sky. The library was taking shape, just as promised. It was an open wound in the old brickwork, healing into something transparent, something that let the light in. In the hallway, Mr. O'Malley walked past the spot where Vance used to stand guard like a warden. He whistled a tune. He adjusted his tie, a bright, colorful one that Vance would have hated. He high-fived a student, and outside, sitting on a bench near the construction site, was Marcus. He wasn't wearing a suit. He wasn't wearing a jumpsuit either. He wore a simple polo shirt and jeans. He held a blueprint in his lap, pointing out a structural detail to the foreman. "Make sure the ramp is wide enough," Marcus said, his voice carrying over the wind. "Accessibility is not an option. It is a requirement." The foreman nodded respectfully. "Yes, Mr. King." Leo ran up to the bench. He was sweaty, out of breath from gym class. He didn't look scared anymore. He didn't look down at his shoes. "Dad! Dad!" Leo panted. "I got an A! On the history project." Marcus smiled. He put down the blueprint. "The one about the founders?" "Yeah," Leo grinned. "I wrote about Grandpa. And you, Marcus laughed, a deep, rich sound that seemed to vibrate through the new glass panes above them. He ruffled Leo's hair. Good job, kid. Now go wash up. You smell like hard work? Leo finished the sentence, his eyes twinkling. Exactly, Marcus said, like a hero. Seen elsewhere. Miles away in a cramped gray government office, the fluorescent lights buzzed with an annoying flicker. Dolores Vance sat on a plastic chair. It was hard, uncomfortable. Next! A bored clerk shouted from behind a glass partition. Vance stood up. Her designer suit was the same one she wore a month ago, but now it looked out of place. Wrinkled. Sad. Like a costume from a play that had closed weeks ago. She walked to the window. Name? The clerk asked, popping gum. Smack, smack. Dolores Vance, she said. She tried to muster some of her old authority. I am here about my unemployment claim. It has been denied 3 times. There must be a mistake. I was a principal. The clerk didn't look up. She typed on a sticky keyboard. Clack, clack, clack. Says here you were terminated for gross moral turpitude and breach of contract. The clerk droned. And there is a note. Public disgrace. The clerk stopped typing. She looked up. She recognized the face. Everyone did. The video had 5 million views. Oh, the clerk said. Her eyes narrowed. You are that lady. The one who hates janitors. Vance flinched. She looked around. People in the waiting room were staring, whispering, pointing phones. It was taken out of context, Vance stammered. The clerk pulled a shutter down over the window. Slam! We are closed for lunch, the clerk muffled from behind the glass. Come back tomorrow, or don't! Vance stood there, alone, in the middle of a room full of people she had looked down on her entire life. And for the first time, she realized she was smaller than all of them. Vance's mouth snapped shut. She swallowed the slur. It tasted like bile. She looked around the room. The cameras were rolling. The red tally lights were unblinking eyes, broadcasting her meltdown to the entire city. She took a breath, shaky, ragged. Then another, deeper. She straightened her spine. The mask of the professional educator slid back into place. It was cracked, yes, but it was still dangerous. Very well, Vance said. Her voice was ice cold. No more screaming. You own the land. Congratulations. You are a landlord. But I am the principal. She walked back to the podium. She picked up her clutch purse. She pulled out a folded document. She always carried it. Her shield. My contract, she announced, holding it up like a weapon. It has a 10-year tenure clause, ironclad, drafted by the best firm in the state. She looked at the board chairman, then at Marcus. She smiled. It was a bloodless, shark-like smile. You can fire me, Mr. King. Please, do it. But according to paragraph 4, section B, if my employment is terminated without a criminal conviction, the school owes me a severance package of $2 million, plus full pension, plus a public apology for defamation. The crowd murmured. $2 million. Vance stepped down from the podium. She walked towards Marcus, her heels clicking with renewed confidence. So go ahead, she whispered, loud enough for the front row to hear. Kick me out. I will take my money. I will move to the coast, and I will laugh all the way to the bank while you try to fix the reputation of this ghetto you are trying to build. She stopped right in front of him. She looked at his suit, then at his face. You can buy the building, Marcus, but you cannot buy the system. The system was built for people like me, not you. It was a gut punch. The audience felt it. The injustice. The sick realization that she was right. She was going to get away with it. She would lose the job, but she would win the war. She would leave rich, unpunished, and vindicated by the fine print. Leo squeezed his father's hand. Dad, he whispered. His voice trembled. Marcus didn't look at Vance. He looked at Leo. He squeezed his hand back. Remember what I told you about the fine print, son? Marcus asked gently. Leo nodded. Marcus turned back to Vance. He didn't look angry. He looked disappointed, like a teacher looking at a student who had failed a simple test. You are right, Dolores. Paragraph 4 is very strong. Vance smirked. She turned to leave. However, Marcus continued, his voice stopping her in her tracks, you skipped paragraph 14. Vance froze. The morality clause. Marcus said. He stepped toward her. He towered over her now. It states that any employee, regardless of tenure, who engages in conduct that brings public shame, disrepute, or demonstrates clear moral turpitude, shall be terminated immediately, with cause. Vance laughed, a nervous, dry sound. Public shame? You have no proof. A recording? I will fight that in court for years. It is inadmissible. Marcus pointed to the back of the room. I am not talking about the recording, Dolores. Vance turned. She looked at the cameras. The news crews who had been invited to cover the gala. They weren't just recording. They were live streaming. Marcus pointed to the side of the stage. And I am not talking about a court of law. Mr. Henderson, the gardener, held up his phone. On the screen was the school's social media page. The live stream comment section was scrolling so fast it was a blur. Thousands of comments. Racist. Fire her. I'm pulling my donation. Did she just call him that? You just broadcast your hate speech to 50,000 people, live, Marcus said. His voice was final. That is public shame, Dolores. That is disrepute. And that, he leaned in close, is a breach of contract. Vance's knees buckled. The $2 million evaporated. The pension, the beach house, gone. No, she whispered. No, you can't. Mr. Chairman, Marcus called out to the old man in the front row. As the primary leaseholder, I am invoking Article 14. Do we have a second? The chairman stood up slowly. He looked at Vance with disgusted eyes. Seconded, the chairman said. You are fired, Mrs. Vance. Effective immediately. Get off my stage. Vance stumbled back. She looked for an ally, a friend, anyone, but the sea of tuxedos and gowns parted away from her. The wealthy donors she had spent years sucking up to, they turned their backs. They didn't want the stench of her failure to stick to them. Security, Marcus said calmly. The two guards stepped forward. This time they didn't hesitate. One guard took Vance's left arm. The other took her right. Get your hands off me, she shrieked. I am the principal. I am... You are trespassing, the guard said. He wasn't gentle. They dragged her down the center aisle, the same aisle she had forced Marcus to mop yesterday. Her heels dragged on the floor, leaving scuff marks that she would never order anyone to clean again. Click. It wasn't a camera shutter. It was the sound of the exit doors opening. And then, she was gone. The silence in the hall was different now. It wasn't heavy. It was clean, like the air after a thunderstorm. Marcus stood alone on the stage. He looked at the podium. He didn't step behind it. He didn't want the power she had wielded. He walked to the edge of the stage and sat down, dangling his legs like a regular guy. He waved Leo over. Leo ran up the stairs. He hugged his dad, a fierce, desperate hug that buried his face in Marcus's suit jacket. Marcus held him tight. Then he reached into his pocket. He pulled out the gold pocket watch, the one Vance had thought was stolen, the one O'Malley had recognized. He held it up. The light from the chandeliers caught the gold, making it glow. Students, Marcus said. He looked at the teenagers in the room, the ones who had laughed at Leo, the ones who had been afraid. This watch belonged to my grandfather. He was a janitor, too. The room was listening, really listening. He cleaned floors so my father could go to college. My father built a company so I could build this school. And I mopped these hallways. He looked at Leo, so I could remind myself what really matters. It is not the name on the building, it is the people inside it. He placed the watch in Leo's hand. We are going to build that library, Leo, Marcus said. He smiled. And yes, it will have a glass roof. Leo looked at the watch, then at his dad. He smiled. A real smile. Can we get pizza first? Leo asked. I'm starving. The crowd laughed. A warm, genuine sound that broke the tension completely. Marcus stood up. He adjusted his suit. He looked at the room one last time. Meeting adjourned, he said. The waiting game was suffocating. 10 minutes. That was all it took for the flashing red and blue lights to wash over the blinds of Principal Vance's office. Whoop, whoop! The siren cut short as the cruiser pulled up to the front steps. Vance smirked. She adjusted the silk scarf around her neck, ensuring she looked the part of the distressed victim. I hope you said your goodbyes to Leo, she said, her voice dripping with faux pity. Child Protective Services usually takes a few hours to process a ward of the state. It is a shame, really. Marcus didn't answer. He stood by the window watching the two officers walk up the path. He recognized the stride of the older one, Sergeant Miller, 20 years on the force, a good man, a tired man. The door swung open. Sergeant Miller stepped in, his hand resting instinctively on his belt. His partner, a rookie, looked nervous. "Principal Vance? We got a call about a theft in progress?" "Grand larceny, Sergeant," Vance corrected sharply. She pointed a long, accusatory finger at Marcus. "My wallet, found in his pocket. We have witnesses." Miller turned to Marcus. He paused. His eyes narrowed slightly, scanning the janitor's face. The gray stubble, the weary eyes, the grease stain on the collar. Miller didn't see a criminal. He saw a man standing at attention. Perfect posture, shoulders back, chin up. "Name?" Miller asked, pulling out his notepad. "Marcus King." "ID?" Marcus reached into his back pocket. Slowly, deliberately. He pulled out a worn leather wallet, his real one, and slid out a driver's license. Vance scoffed. "Probably fake. Check it thoroughly. These people always have aliases." Miller took the card. He radioed dispatch. "Dispatch, run a check. King, Marcus, Kilo India November Golf." Crackle. Hiss. The radio static filled the tense silence. Vance tapped her nails on the mahogany desk. Tap, tap, tap. A countdown to what she thought was victory. Then the radio crackled back. But the dispatcher's voice wasn't bored anymore. It was urgent. "Unit 4 Alpha. Verify subject DOB. Is this the Marcus King?" Miller frowned. He looked at the license, then at the computer screen on the rookie's tablet. His eyebrows shot up. He scrolled down and down. "Code clear, no priors. Subject is flagged as level 1 priority." Miller froze. Level 1. That was usually reserved for senators, or judges, or people who owned half the city. He looked up at the janitor in the oversized jumpsuit. "Mr. King," Miller said. His tone changed. It wasn't softer. It was respectful. "Is there a problem here?" Vance's jaw dropped. She stood up, slamming her hands on the desk. "Excuse me? He stole my wallet. The priority level doesn't matter if he is a thief. Search him. Search him again. He probably has more stolen goods on him." Miller sighed. He looked at Marcus. An unspoken apology passed between them. "Sir, I have to follow procedure. Do you mind emptying your pockets?" Marcus nodded. "Of course, Sergeant, do your job." Marcus reached into his left pocket. He pulled out a set of keys, a crumpled tissue, and then he reached into his inner breast pocket. He pulled out a card. It wasn't blue. It wasn't gold. It was black, matte black, made of anodized titanium. He placed it on the desk. Clang. The sound was heavy, distinct. It didn't sound like plastic hitting wood. It sounded like metal, like a weapon. The rookie officer gasped. "Is that a Centurion?" "The American Express Centurion card. The black card. Invitation only. No spending limit. You didn't just apply for this card. You were chosen." Vance stared at it. Her brain refused to process the visual information. A janitor. A black card. Impossible. "It is stolen," she blurted out. Her voice was shaking now. "He stole it from a parent or a donor. Check the name." Miller picked up the card. He felt the weight of it. He turned it over. Embossed in silver laser etching were 2 words: Marcus King. Miller looked at the license again, then the card, then the janitor. "It matches, ma'am." "It is his card." "That's impossible!" Vance shrieked. She was losing control. The narrative was crumbling. "He scrubs toilets. He eats leftovers. It is a forgery, a high-quality forgery." She lunged for the card, desperate to find a flaw, a scratch, anything to prove her prejudice right. "Ma'am, step back," Miller ordered. His hand went up. "Mr. King has valid ID. He has significant means. And frankly, with a credit limit like this, I doubt he needs your $200. Miller handed the card back to Marcus. Marcus took it. He didn't gloat. He didn't smile. He just slid it back into his pocket right next to his heart. "Are we done here, Sergeant?" Marcus asked. "For now," Miller said. He glared at Vance. "Principal, filing a false police report is a crime. If you waste my time again, we will be having a very different conversation." The officers turned to leave. Vance stood there, trembling with rage. Her face was red. Humiliation burned in her veins like acid. She watched Marcus. He hadn't won. Not yet. As the door clicked shut behind the police, Vance whispered, "Low. Dangerous. You think you are clever? You think a fake credit card scares me?" She walked around the desk. She was cornered, and like a cornered animal, she was ready to bite. Tomorrow is the gala. The board of directors will be here. The wealthy parents, the media. I will expose you. I will dig up every dirt pile in your past. I will prove you are a fraud in front of everyone. She smiled, a twisted, ugly smile. And then, I will make sure Leo watches you get dragged out in handcuffs. For real this time. Marcus walked to the door. He paused, his hand on the brass knob. He didn't look back. Make sure the microphone works tomorrow, Dolores. You will want everyone to hear what happens. He walked out. The hallway was empty, but the air felt heavy. Marcus walked towards the exit, but he didn't go home. He turned left, toward the server room. Proof. Layer 1 was the card. That was the C. Now, it was time for Layer 2, the here. He needed the audio logs, not just from the cafeteria, but from everywhere. He entered the server room. The hum of the cooling fans was a comfort. This was his world. He sat down at the terminal. His fingers danced over the keyboard. Access denied. He typed again. Access denied. Administrator override required. Vance had changed the passwords. Of course she had. She wasn't stupid, just evil. Marcus leaned back. He closed his eyes. He thought about the code he wrote 15 years ago. The skeleton key protocol he built into the kernel for emergency access. Did they patch it? He typed a string of numbers. His son's birthday, not Leo's, but his first son. The one he lost. The reason he built schools in the first place. Access granted. Green text cascaded down the screen. Audio files, thousands of them. He filtered by Vance_office. He filtered by cafeteria. He found it. A file dated yesterday. Timestamp, 12:45 p.m. Location, cafeteria PA system. He clicked play. Control your son, or I will... It was there, clear as day. But it wasn't enough. A threat was bad, but he needed a confession. He needed her to admit the bias, the hatred, the systemic plan to remove undesirables. He kept scrolling, and then he found a file named Board Meeting Private 04. He put on his headphones. He pressed play. Vance's voice filled his ears. She wasn't talking to students. She was talking to a board member. We need to gentrify the student body. Passing scores aren't enough. We need the right image. The scholarship kids, the colored ones, they bring down the property value. I'm finding ways to filter them out. One by one, Marcus's blood ran cold. It wasn't just him. It wasn't just Leo. It was a purge. He inserted a USB drive. Copying. 10%. 50%. 100%. He pulled the drive out. He held it up to the blinking server light. It looked like a small piece of plastic, but in his hand it felt like a grenade. The Grand Hall of St. Jude's Academy did not look like a school gymnasium tonight. It looked like a royal ballroom. Crystal chandeliers, rented for $5,000 a night, hung from the rafters, dripping with artificial light. Round tables were draped in white silk. The air smelled of expensive perfume, truffle oil, and old money. Clink, clink, clink. Waiters in white gloves moved like ghosts, refilling champagne flutes. At the center of it all stood Principal Dolores Vance. She wore a floor-length gown of emerald green silk. It shimmered under the lights like the skin of a snake. She held a crystal flute, laughing at a donor's joke. Her head tilted back, her throat exposed. She looked invincible. She checked her reflection in a silver spoon. Perfect. Tonight she would secure the funding for the new wing. Tonight she would cement her legacy. And tonight, she would crush the undesirables. The heavy oak doors at the back of the hall creaked open. Heads turned. The murmur of conversation died down. A ripple of silence spread through the room, starting from the back and rolling toward the stage like a wave. Marcus King stood in the doorway. He was not wearing his gray jumpsuit. He wore a suit, charcoal gray, perfectly tailored. It fit his broad shoulders like armor. He wore no tie. The top button of his crisp white shirt was undone. Beside him stood Leo. The boy looked small in his Sunday best, clutching his father's hand as if it were a lifeline. Vance lowered her glass. Her smile vanished. She excused herself from the donors and marched to the podium. She tapped the microphone. Thump. Thump. "Ladies and gentlemen," Vance purred. Her voice boomed through the massive speakers. "It seems we have unexpected guests." She gestured toward the back of the room. A spotlight swung around. Swish! It blinded Marcus and Leo, pinning them against the door like insects on a display board. "Mr. King," Vance said. Her tone was patronizing, loud enough for everyone to hear. "I believe the custodial staff entrance is around the back. The catering team might have some leftovers for you later. But this event is for contributors." A few parents chuckled. Nervous, polite laughter. Marcus didn't flinch. He didn't blink. He walked forward. Step, step, step. His dress shoes made a solid, rhythmic sound on the hardwood floor. He walked right down the center aisle, cutting through the sea of tuxedos and gowns. "I am not here for the leftovers, Dolores," Marcus said. His voice was calm, but it carried without a microphone. "I am here for the library." Vance laughed. A sharp barking sound. "The library? The one your son claims you are paying for? With what? Your mop bucket savings?" She leaned over the podium, her eyes flashing with malice. "Security," she commanded. "Please escort our janitor out before he embarrasses himself further. We have standards to maintain." Two guards stepped out from the shadows, the same guards from yesterday. They looked at Marcus. They looked at Vance. They hesitated. "Now!" Vance shrieked. Marcus stopped. He was 10 feet from the stage. He reached into his pocket, not for a weapon, but for his phone. "You talk a lot about standards, Dolores," Marcus said. He looked at the massive projection screen behind her. It was currently displaying the school logo, a shield with the Latin motto Veritas, truth. "Let's talk about yours." He tapped his screen. One single tap. Bloop! The projection screen flickered. The school logo distorted. It dissolved into static, gray and white noise. Then, a waveform appeared. A jagged green audio line. The speakers crackled. Hiss. Then, a voice filled the grand hall. It wasn't Marcus's voice. It was Vance's. "We need to gentrify the student body." The room went deadly silent. A waiter dropped a tray of glasses. Crash! But no one looked. Everyone was staring at the screen. The green line on the screen spiked with every word. "Passing scores aren't enough. We need the right image. The scholarship kids? The colored ones?" On stage, Vance froze. Her face drained of color. She looked like a statue made of ice. She clawed at the podium, trying to find the mute button. But the control wasn't on the podium. It was in the server room, where Marcus had planted his code. "They bring down the property value. I'm finding ways to filter them out, one by one, starting with the janitor's son." The recording ended. The echo hung in the air, thick, heavy, suffocating. For 3 seconds, nobody breathed. Then the murmurs started. It wasn't polite conversation anymore. It was a roar, outrage, shock. Every person in the room turned to look at Vance. The donors, the parents, the teachers. Vance gripped the microphone stand. Her knuckles were white. She looked at the crowd, her eyes wide with panic. She had to spin this. She had to survive. Deep fake. She screamed the word. She pointed a trembling finger at the screen. "That is AI. That is a fabrication. He is a tech terrorist. He is hacking our system to slander me." She looked desperately at the chairman of the board, an elderly man sitting in the front row. "Mr. Chairman, you know me. I have served this school for 10 years. You cannot believe this janitor over me. He is a criminal. I caught him stealing yesterday." She was panting. Sweat beaded on her forehead, ruining her perfect makeup. "He is trying to destroy our heritage, our values. Don't let him win." The crowd wavered. The word deep fake was powerful. Doubt began to creep into their eyes. Was it real? Could a janitor really do this? Marcus saw the doubt. He knew this would happen. This was counterattack number 1. The denial. the gaslighting. He needed the final nail in the coffin. He needed proof. Layer 3. The witness. "You say it is a fake," Marcus said. His voice cut through her hysteria. "You say I am just a janitor." He turned to the side entrance near the stage. "Then perhaps you should ask the owner of the land we are standing on." Vance laughed nervously. "The owner? The owner is a holding company, the King Trust. Nobody knows who runs it." "Actually," a voice boomed from the side door, "we do." The door opened. It wasn't a lawyer. It wasn't a police officer. It was old Mr. Henderson, the quiet, hunchbacked gardener who had worked at the school for 40 years. The man Vance had yelled at just that morning for trimming the hedges too slowly. But tonight, Henderson wasn't wearing his overalls. He was wearing a vintage tuxedo, and in his hand, he held a thick, leather-bound ledger, the original deed to the estate. He walked up the stairs onto the stage. His limp was gone. He stood tall. "Mrs. Vance," Henderson said, his voice gravelly and stern. "You are half right. The King Trust does own this school." He turned to Marcus. He bowed, a deep, respectful bow. "And you are looking at Mr. King." Henderson opened the ledger. He held it up to the camera that was broadcasting to the big screen. The lens zoomed in. There, signed in fading ink dated 50 years ago, was the founder's name, Jeremiah King, and below it, the current trustee's signature, signed just last week for the lease renewal, Marcus King. The room gasped. It was a collective intake of breath that sucked the oxygen out of the hall. Vance looked at the ledger, then at Marcus. The pieces slammed together in her mind. The black card, the engineering skills, the way he walked. She wasn't looking at a janitor. She was looking at her landlord, her boss, her executioner. But a cornered rat doesn't surrender. It bites. Vance's face twisted. The fear vanished, replaced by pure, ugly hatred. She grabbed the microphone again. "So what?" she spat. "So you are rich. Does that change what you are?" She gestured wildly at his face. "You think money buys you class? You think owning the land makes you one of us? You are still just a—" She stopped. She caught herself before she said the word. But everyone heard it. It hung in the air, unspoken but deafening. "Go on," Marcus said softly. He stepped onto the stage. "Say it, Dolores. Finish the sentence." "So, here is the question that will keep you awake tonight. We all hated Dolores Vance. It is easy to hate her. She is the villain. She is the monster in the designer dress. But ask yourself this. If you walked into a building tomorrow, and you saw a man in a dirty jumpsuit scrubbing a stain off the floor, and a woman in a suit shouting orders, who would you respect more? Be honest. Would you make eye contact with the janitor? Would you say thank you? Or would you look through him? Just like she did. We like to think we are different, but prejudice is quiet. It hides in the things we don't say and the people we don't see. So the next time you see someone cleaning up your mess, remember Marcus King. Remember that the hand holding the mop might be the hand that built the world you are standing on. And before you go, did you catch the warning? Go back to 1:15, the very first minute of the story. When Vance is screaming at Marcus in the hallway, look at the chalkboard behind her head, specifically the bottom right corner. There is a list of Founders Day donors written in chalk. The name at the very top, the one she is standing right next to but is too arrogant to look at, is M. King. She was standing in his shadow the entire time, and she never even knew it. Check it out, and tell me in the comments if you saw it. Class dismissed.